The night sky above Antarctica was quiet, painted with stars that looked frozen in place, but deep below the ice something waited that should not have been found, and it was a group of researchers who broke that silence first. Maya Torres, the leader of the small scientific team, stood in front of the strange metallic shape half buried in the frozen wall, her breath rising in clouds as she wiped her goggles. At first she thought it must be an old submarine trapped from some forgotten war, but even in the pale blue ice she could see patterns carved across its surface. They were not human markings, not letters, not numbers, but massive alien symbols that seemed to glow faintly as if the ice itself was keeping them alive. Her colleagues whispered behind her, each one feeling the weight of fear and wonder pressing down. Dr. Lee, the geologist, raised his flashlight, the beam catching angles too perfect for nature and too advanced for any ship humans had built. The closer they dug, the more the ice around them cracked and moaned, as if warning them. When Maya reached out and placed her gloved hand on the metal, the entire cavern shook. A deep hum rolled through the ground, throwing tools to the floor. The light beneath the surface pulsed once like a heartbeat, and then a sharp beam of energy shot upward, tearing through the ice, cutting into the sky. The researchers fell back, covering their eyes as the blinding flash reached into space itself. All around the world, the same second, satellites flickered and went dark, airplanes reported sudden blackouts, cell towers lost their signal. In the oceans, pods of whales and schools of fish rose unnaturally close to the surface, thrashing as if disturbed. On farms thousands of miles away, animals refused to move, their heads snapping toward the South Pole. Maya's radio crackled but no voice came through, only a low ringing tone that made her ears ache. She pulled her glove back and stared at her hand, her skin tingling, as if the ship itself had marked her somehow. Dr. Lee stammered, asking what they had just done, but no one answered because none of them could explain it. Outside, the sky above the ice shelf blazed with strange lights, and somewhere in hidden bunkers military bases scrambled, alarms sounding. High officials demanded answers but none came, only confused reports of a pulse no human technology could have made. Maya turned slowly back to the metallic shape, and now it was no longer just a shape. The ice around it was melting faster than nature allowed, and the glow of the alien symbols had grown brighter, each one moving in patterns like a language alive. She realized then with a chill that ran deeper than the freezing air, this was not just a ship, it was a warship, something designed for battles beyond human imagination, and it had been buried under Antarctica for thousands of years, waiting. But waiting for what, and worse, waiting for who? And if it was truly waking now, then maybe its old masters were not the ones it would serve again. Maya stepped closer, her shadow trembling over the alien hull as the ground beneath her boots shook with another low rumble, and she whispered without meaning to, "What if it is not waiting to be found? What if it is waiting to rise?" The frozen air of Antarctica carried a strange hum as the research team stood around the massive alien structure, its surface now glowing with deep blue lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Maya, the lead scientist, couldn't believe her eyes. She had studied space signals all her life, but nothing compared to this. Her hand still tingled from the moment she touched the ship, and she whispered, almost to herself, "It's alive." The others backed away nervously, while the youngest member of the team, Jacob, pointed to the sky. "Look!" he shouted. Above them, a circle of dark clouds had formed, and in the center, a beam of faint light stretched upward as if the ship was calling to the stars. Radios in their camp crackled, then fell silent, and even the generators powering their lights cut off, leaving only the strange glow of the alien warship to guide them. Then, slowly, with a sound like ice breaking across the ocean, the ground began to split. Cracks spread outward, shaking the snow and ice like an earthquake. The team stumbled, fear rising in their throats, as a massive metallic surface pushed itself up through the ground. It wasn't just a buried wreck, it was moving. The warship was waking after thousands of years of sleep, rising from the prison of ice that had held it hidden. The sound of steel grinding against rock filled the air, and chunks of ice exploded outward as the ship lifted higher, towering over the humans who watched in shock. It had the shape of something both ancient and advanced. Spires like towers, weapons built into its hull, and an aura of strength that seemed far beyond human understanding. Maya felt her heart race as the ship gave a deep, thunderous vibration, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. A force field appeared, crackling faintly, encasing the ship in a bubble of light. The team panicked, shouting, some running back toward their base, but Maya stood frozen. She could feel the ship was not just a machine, it was aware. Then, the unimaginable happened. A deep, resonant voice echoed in their minds, not through their ears, but directly into their thoughts. It was heavy, commanding, and filled with a language they did not understand, yet somehow, pieces of it made sense. New masters. Signal accepted. Protocols initiated. The team looked at each other in terror. "Did you hear that too?" Jacob whispered, his face pale. Before anyone could respond, the ship's weapons lit up with a dull red glow, pointing upward as if scanning the skies. All around the world, radar systems lit up in warning. Military commanders across nations saw something rising in Antarctica and sent emergency signals. Fighter jets were ordered into the air, and submarines crept toward the icy waters. But the ship didn't fire. It just hovered above the ice, its engines glowing with a blue fire that seemed endless. The team realized something important. The warship was not hostile. It was waiting. Maya stepped forward, shaking, and placed her hand on the glowing surface again. This time, the voice grew clearer in her mind. "You awakened us. You lead now. The old masters are gone. New orders required." Maya gasped. The ship was not just awakening, it was looking for someone to command it. And somehow, it had chosen her. The others stared in disbelief, unsure whether to fear her or follow her. "It thinks we're its masters," Maya said softly, her eyes locked on the glowing alien symbols. Jacob laughed nervously. "Maya, this is insane. We're not soldiers. We can't control that." But before anyone could argue further, the ship roared, sending out another beam of light into the stars. Across the galaxy, far beyond human reach, ancient sensors lit up on distant planets. Something had been activated, and something else, something not human, was listening. Maya didn't know it yet, but by touching the warship, she had sent a message that would bring not just attention from Earth's militaries, but from alien civilizations that once ruled the galaxy. The silence of Antarctica was broken forever, and now, humanity was caught in the middle of a power far greater than they understood. The air inside the alien warship was heavy, filled with a strange hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves as Dr. Elena and her team stepped deeper into the dark corridors, their flashlights cutting through layers of dust and frozen mist. But the further they walked, the more the ship seemed to come alive, faint blue lights flickering on like eyes opening after a long sleep, and with every step they felt as if something was watching them. One of the younger scientists, James, whispered nervously that it felt like the ship was breathing, and though the others laughed at first, no one could deny that the sound of air moving through unseen vents matched the rhythm of a living creature, sending chills down their spines. Yet curiosity pulled them forward until they reached a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. A massive circular room filled with tall glass-like pillars that glowed softly and showed strange shadows moving inside, as if something, or someone, was trapped within. And as the team gathered around, Elena noticed that the symbols etched on the walls were not just decoration but maps, star charts stretching across the galaxy, with glowing marks pointing to Earth at the center. The realization struck them all at once that Earth was not a random place where this ship had crashed but perhaps the very reason it was buried here, and before they could process this, the floor vibrated again and a deep voice, mechanical yet almost human, echoed through the chamber saying, "Command recognized, awaiting orders," which made everyone freeze in terror, for it was not one of them speaking, it was the ship itself addressing them directly. The words seemed to shake the air, making the glass pillars tremble, and Elena, her voice shaking, said quietly that they needed to be careful, but James, unable to hold back his excitement, shouted into the room asking what the ship was, who it served, and why it had been hidden, and suddenly the pillars flared with light, showing clearer shapes inside, tall armored figures, frozen in stasis, their eyes glowing faintly as if waiting to wake, and the ship's voice answered with chilling calmness. This vessel served the Xylan Dominion, supreme masters of war, awaiting activation, awaiting new commanders. Panic rippled through the team as they realized the ship was ready to accept leadership, ready to follow whoever spoke with authority. But Elena raised her hand and warned everyone not to say another word, because if the ship truly accepted them as commanders, They could be giving orders to something they did not understand, and yet it was too late because James, still overwhelmed by the discovery, stepped forward and said loudly, "We are your new masters." And the chamber exploded with light. The pillars cracked open with hissing steam, and the armored figures began to stir, lifting their massive weapons, their glowing eyes now fixed on the humans, who stood frozen between terror and awe, knowing that the choice of one reckless voice had just awakened an army that had slept for thousands of years beneath the ice. The chamber filled with a terrible noise, a sound like metal grinding against metal, as the tall armored figures stepped out of their broken glass prisons, steam hissing around them, their heavy feet shaking the floor with every movement, and the humans could only watch in horror as these ancient soldiers raised their weapons and turned their glowing eyes toward James, the one who had claimed to be their master. Elena grabbed his arm, whispering furiously that he had no idea what he had done. But it was too late. The soldiers bent their heads slightly, as if acknowledging his command, and the ship's voice boomed again, saying, "Chain of command established, awaiting orders," which made James's face pale as he realized the truth. This army was now listening to him, and only him, yet before he could speak, the whole ship rumbled as if something outside had noticed the awakening, and far above the ice cracked violently, sending shockwaves that reached even the distant research station, where military officers monitoring the excavation suddenly saw the readings spike and alarms blare across their screens, forcing generals and presidents thousands of miles away to pay attention, their encrypted lines buzzing with panicked voices asking the same question: what had humanity awakened under the ice? Back inside the warship, Elena tried to reason with James, telling him to order the soldiers back into sleep, but James, his voice trembling, said that maybe this was humanity's chance. Maybe this was why the ship was buried here, maybe Earth had been chosen, and as he spoke, the alien soldiers slowly lowered their weapons, waiting patiently, their discipline terrifying to behold, and just when the team thought they had a moment to breathe, the ship's systems flared brighter and panels along the walls opened, revealing screens filled with shifting star maps, battle records, and holograms of past wars, showing fleets of thousands of ships tearing across the galaxy, burning entire worlds, and the words Xylan Dominion, Supreme Victory Protocol, flashed across the air, leaving no doubt that this was not a peaceful vessel but a war machine built for domination. Elena's stomach turned as she whispered that they had not discovered history, they had discovered a weapon, and as the ship registered new activity, it began transmitting signals into space, pulses of light racing faster than anything human satellites had ever seen, and in orbit, every major defense agency picked up the strange bursts, sparking chaos in command centers from Washington to Beijing to Moscow, where officials demanded immediate answers, afraid that Earth had just announced itself to the stars. Meanwhile, deep inside the warship, the alien soldiers stepped aside to form two perfect lines, their movements eerily synchronized, and at the far end of the chamber a massive door slid open, revealing another space, an armory filled with weapons so advanced that they seemed to breathe, glowing blades, rifles humming with energy, and strange devices that pulsed as if alive, and James, caught between fear and wonder, took a step forward, but Elena blocked him, shouting that they needed to stop this before it spread beyond their control. Yet the ship spoke again in its calm, cold voice. "New campaign may begin. Select target." The words froze everyone, because they realized the ship was not asking if they wanted war, it was assuming war was inevitable, only waiting to know where to strike, and in that silence, James's voice cracked as he whispered that maybe Earth could use this power to defend itself against whoever had once threatened it. But Elena shook her head, telling him that power like this never stayed in one set of hands, that governments and armies would soon learn of this discovery, and they would fight. Not the aliens but each other to claim the ship, and as if to prove her right, a sudden explosion echoed above them, chunks of ice falling from the ceiling as heavy footsteps approached from the tunnels behind. Armed soldiers from the surface, sent by the world's militaries, stormed into the chamber with rifles raised, shouting for the scientists to step away from the alien machines, their faces filled with both fear and greed. But before they could act, the alien soldiers moved faster than anything human eyes had seen, their weapons humming as they aimed directly at the intruders, waiting only for James's command. And in that terrible moment, everyone realized that one word from him could decide whether humanity stood united or was torn apart by the very power it had just awakened. The warship floated above the ice like a mountain pulled from the earth, its dark silver surface glowing with strange blue veins of energy. The world held its breath as every camera, every drone, Every soldier pointed their eyes at the massive alien craft. Inside the ship, Maya, Dr. Alvarez, and a handful of soldiers stood on the command deck, staring at controls that pulsed like living veins. The moment was heavy with silence until the ship itself spoke again, its deep metallic voice echoing inside their heads. New masters detected. Choice must be made. The crew froze. Maya whispered, "It's asking us. Who will control it?" The soldiers looked at each other nervously. Each screen around them displayed faces, leaders from across the planet trying to connect, sending live demands, promises, and even threats. Some governments promised wealth, others threatened destruction if the ship was not handed over. But then the ship changed the question. Who fights for survival, not power? The screens shifted, showing flashes of Earth's history, wars, betrayals, greed, and destruction. The crew saw themselves reflected in those images, human flaws laid bare. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered, "It knows too much about us." Dr. Alvarez pressed his hands on the console, his face pale. "This ship isn't asking us to control it," he said. "It's deciding if we are worthy at all." As if to confirm his words, the ship projected a star map, showing hundreds of red marks, other warships, other fleets scattered across the galaxy. Some were awake, some sleeping, but all connected like pieces of a vast army. Maya stepped closer, her heart racing. It's not just one ship, it's a whole network. And if this one wakes up, the others might too. Outside, fighter jets circled nervously, missiles locked but never fired. Ground control screamed orders over radios, unsure whether to attack or to wait. Suddenly, the ship sent another pulse, this one spreading across the sky, reaching satellites, planes, even human phones. Every person alive could feel a vibration in their bones. The message was clear, in every language, in every mind: choose the voice of humanity. The world froze. News anchors went silent on live television. Soldiers lowered their weapons. In the command deck, the crew realized they had to choose one human to speak for the entire planet. The soldiers argued, leaders shouted through screens, but the ship ignored them all. Its lights focused on Maya, the barefoot researcher who had first touched the hull. Her heart stopped. "Why me?" she whispered. The ship's voice thundered. "You walked without armor. You carried no weapon. You asked no power. You serve survival." The room fell silent. The soldiers lowered their eyes. Dr. Alvarez gave a faint nod, almost in tears. "It chose you, Maya." Outside, the world still burned with arguments, leaders demanding control, armies on edge. But inside, the decision was already made. The warship had chosen its master. Maya stepped toward the glowing console, her hands shaking. The surface rose to meet her touch, wrapping around her palms like living metal. Energy surged through her body, her vision filling with stars, battles, memories of civilizations that once commanded the ship. She gasped as she saw their rise, their wars, and their fall into ashes. And then she saw Earth, fragile, young, unprepared. The ship whispered in her mind, "We rise again." But this time, humanity must decide, fight for survival, or repeat the mistakes of the past. Maya opened her eyes, glowing faintly with the ship's light. The crew looked at her with awe and fear. She was no longer just a researcher. She was the voice of the warship, the link between mankind and a forgotten power. But with that choice came a burden heavier than the ship itself. Outside, militaries prepared to strike, believing control was slipping away. Inside, Maya's next words could decide not only who owned the warship, but whether Earth would unite, or destroy itself trying. The alien warship floated above Earth like a shadow that covered the sky, its surface glowing with strange blue lines as if alive, and the whole world watched it from below with both fear and hope, not knowing what it would do next. Inside the ship, the human crew led by Dr. Elena stood at the command bridge, their hands shaking as alien symbols rearranged themselves into something that looked almost like human language, and the ship's voice spoke through the speakers in a deep, ancient tone, saying, "New masters recognized, warship ready." The silence after those words felt heavier than the weight of the ship itself. Some of the scientists were too scared to move. Others looked at Elena waiting for her to decide, because now it was clear the ship was waiting for them to give the first command. Outside, world leaders argued on secure channels, some demanding the ship be destroyed before it could fully wake, others begging to use it as protection. But no one could reach a decision because the ship's systems had already blocked all outside interference and answered only to the crew standing on the bridge. Elena felt her heart racing as she touched the glowing console, and images filled her mind. Battles fought in space, planets burning, alien fleets destroyed by this same warship thousands of years ago, and then the moment it fell to Earth and was buried under ice as if hiding until someone worthy came. She stumbled back, gasping, realizing the ship had chosen them not by chance but by something deeper, something it saw in humanity itself. Her fellow scientist Mark whispered that maybe they were not its masters but its last chance at survival, that the ship needed them as much as they needed it, but Elena feared the cost. Suddenly alarms lit across the bridge, the ship showing warnings of incoming objects from orbit, and screens displayed alien vessels, sleek, sharp, and alive with strange energy, racing toward Earth. The crew realized the activation signal had reached across the stars, calling the ancient enemies of the warship, and now those enemies had returned. The humans froze, staring at the images of the approaching fleet, their numbers far greater than anything Earth's military could stop. The warship pulsed with power, the decks vibrating as if eager to fight, waiting for Elena to speak. For a moment she hesitated, torn between the fear of starting a war and the fear of letting humanity fall, but then she remembered the ship's words, "New masters recognized," and she understood it would not fight without them. With trembling lips she gave her first command, "Defend Earth." The ship roared to life, its cannons unfolding like the wings of a giant beast, energy charging through its core, shaking the clouds as blue lightning spread across the sky. People all over the world looked up in awe, watching a human voice command an alien weapon that had once belonged to another civilization, and in that moment humanity was no longer helpless. The alien fleet descended, firing streams of burning light, but the warship's shields spread wide, covering cities below like a protective dome, and with a sound like thunder it fired back, destroying the first enemy vessel in a single strike. Cheers erupted across military bases, across crowded streets, across homes where families huddled in fear, but Elena knew this was only the beginning. The ship spoke again, telling her that this battle was not just about Earth but about balance across the galaxy, that by waking it she had stepped into an old war that never ended, and now humanity stood at the center. As more alien ships appeared on the horizon of space, Elena tightened her grip on the console, no longer trembling. For the first time in human history, Earth was not hiding, not begging for mercy, but standing tall with a weapon that once shook empires. And as the warship roared into the sky to meet its enemies, guided by human voices, the world realized a new age had begun, an age where humanity was no longer the hunted, but the master of an ancient power that would decide the future of stars.